When we think of entrepreneurs who have scaled billion-dollar businesses, our thoughts likely go to tech leaders in London or indeed the US. Not a guy who started his entrepreneurial career as a young welder in Cork. A natural entrepreneur since the age of 16. Our next speaker went from running a welding business to founding major companies like Trinity Commerce, The Cloud, and Inspired Gaming Group, a company he almost sold for $1 billion. He's not scared about that at all, by the way. Now, as founder and chairman of Cool Planet, he's focused on tackling some bigger issues, climate change. I have to say, there's certain people that you meet who really leave an indelible mark on you, and Norman Crowley is one of those people. Leaning on his experience of walking and coaching people to walk on hot coals, Norman's advice, shared on ScaleX Insider, still rings in my ears. Keep feckin' walking. This business shit isn't easy. Anyone who tells you it's easy is not trying hard enough, so keep walking. Don't give up. Profound advice. Yes, he's known for his infectious passion and the odd expletive. This guy has been around the business scaling block about 5 times now and gets what it's all about. The people, the purpose, and building a positive growth culture. Folks, please, could you put your hands together for the unforgettable Norman Crowley.
Thanks. Hello. I just thought I'd bring some Cork energy to this Belfast room. There's a picture of a cow. Anyone know what kind of cow it is? Frisian, yeah. Or posh people would say a Holstein, although that mightn't be a Holstein. It's lovely to be here in Belfast. There's always a different energy here to anywhere else. You can still feel the history of the industry that's been here for a very long time. So I thought I would split this into 2 things. One is just my story, the no bullshit version, and the other is where we see things going, and then a tsunami that's coming towards us, and what we're doing about that tsunami. Yeah. So I started off in Cork. I was born in 1970. And in 1970 in Ireland, there was very little money, and there was a lot of religion. Yeah. Down south, Catholic, up here, Protestant. The only difference really was that you had better roads. Yeah. And then I think we caught up somewhere along the line. And my memory of that earlier part is that all I wanted to do was escape. Yeah. And I used to think it was that I wanted to make money, but I think money was just a route to escape, because it always felt suppressed and not free. Yeah. And I wanted to be free. And so when I started off, our inputs were quite strange, and I think everyone here of that age had similar inputs. It was life on a farm was about scraping shit, right, and hoping to get a couple of bucks together, right? And then we would watch television, and what we watched on TV was like Dallas, right? And who here remembers Dallas? We're not doing too bad, actually. Yeah. So think about the contradiction between my life of scraping shit and then Dallas, right? And it was a very confusing time because we were being preached from the pulpit about purity, and then these guys were driving fancy cars and sleeping around, right? And I think I was leaning a little bit more towards the fancy cars. And so searching for this freedom, and for me, business and making money equaled freedom. Yeah. If I do that, then I will be free, right? So when I was about 13, my dad taught me how to weld. And welding was like alchemy to me because it was something that I could do that other people would pay me money to do. And school went out the window then because it was all about who could pay me to do this welding thing, and then I could be free. Yeah. So it was that simple an equation. And for a long time as well, it was hard work equals freedom. Right? And so I won't go through the CV because you've heard it, and I'm largely here to talk about other things, but maybe just some highlights. So the welding moved to a little bit more technical welding, moved to software, moved to selling computer hardware, and all during my 20s, the thing just got bigger and bigger. And by the time I was 29, we'd built quite a big business, relatively speaking, about 170 people, and it was in multiple countries. And Aircom, the Irish Telecoms group, decided to buy the business. In fact, it was a bit of a bidding war. And at the ripe old age of 29, we sold it out for 14 million. And so when you look from the outside in, young guy makes loads of money, right? When you're in it, it's actually very confusing. And nobody tells you what that's like, and there's no guidebook, right? And actually selling out for a lot, and I've met a lot of people who've sold out or exited, it's very stressful actually, and people don't know that, or people don't realize that, you know. There tends to be this thing about, you're a pity about him or her, right, that they have all this money. But actually there's a lot going on. And I learned that then, that if you're insecure and not sure of yourself when you're young, or when you're going through it, you think that when you sell out, you become something else. You become, I'm not insecure anymore. If you're a guy, I'm James Bond, right? Because you got a fancy car, you must be James Bond. But actually, you're just insecure, right? You were insecure before, and you're insecure now, which is why you meet a lot of insecure rich people, right? So it doesn't change you, and I thought it would, but it didn't. So what you actually do then is the other thing they don't tell you is, as stressful as it is to run a business and to try and grow a business, and when you sell, in theory, that stress stops, right? But also, you're now outside of the family that you created, right? And so you feel slightly lost, right? So the first thing I did after about 3 weeks was I went back to work, right? And so many entrepreneurs do that, right? And it's both a good idea and a bad idea. But now with the benefit of time, it's kind of a bad idea. And it's important to try and think about, well, if I was insecure and now I'm an insecure rich person, maybe it's a good idea just to stop being so insecure, right? Easier said than done. And so back to the CV, for security, I decided to start another one. And in 2001, we set up Inspired Gaming Group. And the story of Inspired Gaming Group is, again, this kind of simple story, right? Started it off in 2001 with 8 people. It became, by 2006, 2,500 people. We floated it on the London Stock Exchange. And then in 2008, we sold it for $500 million after nearly selling it for $1 billion, right? And because when you're an entrepreneur, and I know there's a lot of you characters in the room, you can't have one thing on the go. My wife says, you're like chain smokers. And so there's never one business. There's always one, and then the other 2 that you're thinking about, or actually you have several on the go. And so while we were doing Inspired, we also did a business called The Cloud, which we started in 2004, which became Europe's largest Wi-Fi operator. And we sold that in 2011 for about $500 million, right? So, sorry, for $100 million. So when you look at all that, you go, oh, what an amazing character, right? And there were amazing times in there, right? But what you don't here is me in 2008 writhing on the floor of a bathroom, having a panic attack, having done 10 cities in the last 7 or 8 days, and having not seen nature in ages, not seen my kids in about 15 or 20 days. Right? So this stuff, if you're not careful, this thing that in the abstract looks amazing can rip you apart. Right? And more, that's the case with a lot of businesses. Yeah. And so that's the thing people don't talk about, is they look at it and go, success, success, scale, scale. But what's becoming more important is what's happening with us. And it's fascinating, even looking at the speakers today, there are tactical speakers, and I'm kind of some bridge maybe between the two, but actually there's a huge amount of people just talking about human performance, all of that kind of thing. Because that is, you show me entrepreneurs that are successful and have exited, and they're either one of two types. They're balanced, which is the vast minority, or else they're deeply insecure but rich, which is the vast majority. And that's not really much of a prize for all that hard work and making money. So the rare air, as Jack said earlier, is, am I comfortable in my own skin? And yes, am I lucky to make a couple of bucks? And then can I share that couple of bucks with other people? And then that brings everybody joy. Yeah. So 2011, putting myself back together, we start again. And this time, we understood that we were business people, and it's a bit of an addiction, right? But also wanted to make an impact, and had young girls at the time, who are now older girls, and I found out about climate change. I forgot to push the slides, bear with me here. Colm, who's our head of brand, will be gutted at his sexy pictures, not... Okay, I hit the next button. Where's the receiver, I wonder? Is it jiggered? We could just live with the cow. Who's in charge? PowerPoint, lads. Yes. The business conquering hero, yeah. So then, young girls, I heard about climate change. I saw an inconvenient truth. And we have this strange dialogue with climate change, right? But if you think about it, this is the picture for me that tells it all, right? I get emotional even describe it. Like loss, pain caused by our activities, right? So that is the reality of what we're living with, right? And so we wanted to do something about this, right? So in the process of that, we started to look around, and we're business people, so we look at everything from a business lens. And climate change is caused by energy, transport, meat. Yeah, they're the three things that cause it. And so what we did was we built Cool Planet, and it took 15 years, but Cool Planet operates in 23 countries around the world, and it works with the biggest carbon emitters to get them to zero, right? To get them to zero carbon. And it's a successful business in doing that, but also it's a challenge in the world to achieve that. To give you an idea how challenging it is, our largest client emits more carbon than France. Right? So every man, woman, child, car, truck, nuclear power plant, coal-fired plant in France, we have a client that emits more than that, right? And so we take that job, I guess, very seriously on solving that. And we like to be controversial about it because people have a funny attitude towards it. It's, you know, we kind of joke about sustainability, and we kind of say, well, sure, that's green or whatever it is. But this guy doesn't look like he's joking, right? And so we feel into both the threat and the sadness, but also the absolute monster financial opportunity. And the one superpower that business people have is we can look at a thing, we can then break it down into dollars and cents, and then we can do something about it. And it's amazing how few people do that in the world of climate. There's an awful lot of like wish, hope, and prayer, and it shouldn't be this way, right? Instead of just looking at it and going, let's just fix this and let's just get on with it and try and take the emotion out of it. Yeah. And so what we talk about a lot is we talk about the excitement of sustainability, because the problem with sustainability is my sustainable girlfriend, right? So if I was to say to you now, I have a new girlfriend, yeah, well, Anne, my wife who's here, would be pretty shocked at the news and the kind of slightly uncouth way I have announced it. But she's been shocked by me before, just not in that way. But if I said to you, I have a new girlfriend, and you're my friends, you're my new friends, and you would say, what's she like? Right? And I'd say, she's sustainable. What happened to your energy there? Right? It's like, oh. Because my sustainable girlfriend clearly smells of garlic, probably wears hemp clothes with holes in them, and is zero crack. Right? And if you associate sustainability with that, that's the big problem in the world, right? It's like, we're going to give everyone free energy, stop polluting the whole place, and everybody's going to drive really cool cars, right? And we're going, no, because we've had the crappy washing powder that doesn't work, and the paper this, and everything else, and the vegans who won't shut up about being vegan, right? And I'm vegan. And so what we do here as well in Cool Planet is we do something else, right? Which is we move the money, okay? And so to give you an idea, on the money side of climate change and fixing it was a 200 billion business in 2001, okay? And now it's a 1.7 trillion business, yeah? And by 2030, it'll be a 4 trillion business. So this thing, my sustainable girlfriend with the hemp clothes, is not climate change resolution. Climate change resolution is exciting, and it's incredibly profitable, and it's an interesting and incredibly exciting business, right? But how do you, when you're talking to these CEOs of the world and the big carbon emitters, and you're trying to get this message across, how do you get it across, right? They're there and they're like, I'm sick of hearing about this, and I read in the Wall Street Journal it's going to cost a fortune, and. It's like growth mindset, what Jack was saying earlier. What is the growth mindset that snaps people out of this, right? So it's pretty sexy, right? Do you like that one? There's a few car collectors in the audience. Does this look like my sustainable girlfriend? Yeah. So this is called LSD EV, right? Because it looks like you're on LSD when you look at it, right? 0 to 60, 1.7 seconds, right? It doesn't look like sustainable, does it? Right? So we do things like this. We have a business called Ava, and Ava's sole function in the world is to shock you out of a mindset. It's, this can't be sustainable, right? and yet it is, right? So what Cool Planet does is it does the serious business stuff, and then it does things like this that are both fun, jaw-droppingly exciting, and they exist to take you out of yourself, take you to somewhere else, and then when we have you somewhere else, then we'll tell you what fixing climate change really looks like. Yeah. So climate change is a very big problem in the world, right? But there's a bigger problem, and it's a problem, maybe some of you here work in climate, but there's a problem that is looming, which is if you think climate is bad, this one, which is already upon us, is way, way bigger, right? And if you look at this, this is the thing we all have to deal with. This conference is called Scale. And Jack said earlier, you can't scale without people, right? Either if you're a one-person business, then you have to, you have to sell to your clients, right? And you have suppliers that you have to deal with. If you're growing a company, then you have to grow a team, right? And for some reason, this is how we grow teams now, right? Like with buzzwords, right? We're all adding value. We're all dealing with, and we hide behind these buzzwords all the time, right? Everyone doesn't have a problem anymore. They have an issue, right? And every buzzword you use, be it an industry one or just a business buzzword, is just something to hide behind. There's no I in team. There's no this. It's all there, right? But our heart doesn't want that, right? Our heart wants to connect to somebody else. Yeah? But yet this is where we found ourselves now, is hiding behind buzzwords. And if that was the only problem, I'm sure we could fix it. Yeah, we get Jack. Jack would leave a few curses out of him, and we'd all connect a bit more and have a bit more of a laugh. But there's more to it. So food is, in the last 20 years, has been destroyed, right? And so now what we have is everything we consume. How many people here travel more than half the month? Yeah, okay. How many people travel 1 or 2 days a week? Yeah. So have you ever gone to a filling station and you're on a low sugar thing? Yeah. You do the lap of the filling station and there's nothing you can eat. Right? So you end up like living off nuts and water all the time. And the reason why is because everything we're consuming now is laced with everything from sugar to seed oils to you name it. Every single thing, right? A Starbucks laced with sugar, right? Every single thing. And this is destroying us. So this, coupled with the buzzword thing, is the beginning of some bad news. And the data behind this is just shocking, right? If your diet is anything less than perfect, right, then your chances of anxiety and depression are going up by 50%. So so now we've said we hide behind buzzwords, we don't like communicating as directly as we used to, and then we have the food thing, right? And then this one, right? So we all now love our phones, right? With young people, the statistics are staggering and bad. And you might say older people get away with it because we had a different upbringing. But actually among 50-year-old plus people, 40% of people who use their phone daily would prefer not to interact with other people. Right? And so you have this issue as well. And then with young people, if you take women and girls, and as the father of girls, their chances of anxiety and depression in the last 10 years have increased 131%. Okay? So now where are we, right? So we have food, we have this way we communicate, we have this. And then, as if all that wasn't bad enough, we also have climate anxiety, which we spoke about. We have anxiety about Trump coming in. I was shocked last week, and I don't know, did you guys see this, that you talk to your US team, in our case, or also you talk to friends in the US, and everyone is broken and depressed last week, right? And people in Europe are broken and depressed. He's not even our president, right? And so the amount of anxiety that we're feeling from all this is huge, right? Then, and I hope you're enjoying my motivational speech here. But I do want you to hear this, because this shit isn't going away, right? And if you think that you're not seeing it, then look again, right? And in another year or two, you'll be talking about nothing else but this, okay? So it is incredibly important. The final thing is, and it's very interesting when we look at the speakers at a business conference this time, there's so much about breath work and how we build teams and how we connect. The reason for that shift is because of this stuff, right? The final one of the holy shit ones is trauma, right? So according to the CDC, Center for Disease Control, 66% of people have experienced trauma. Divorce, right? Some kind of substance abuse, some kind of whatever. And if you think, thank God I'm not one of the 60-something percent, we also have, and they've discovered this now in our DNA, intergenerational trauma, right? So guess what? Your mom or your dad passed it on. And if you think you got away with that one, guess what? Their mom and dad passed it on to them. And what are the features of trauma? Well, anger, right? Self-sabotage, the need to be reassured all the time. Sound familiar with either us or the people that work with us? So this is the tsunami, right? And all the statistics, if you think climate's bad on shit statistics and bad numbers that don't look good, you should see the numbers around this thing, right? And then we're all expected to build teams, right? And then if you're a one-person business, you have to deal with your clients who are corporations. And if you want to see some next level dysfunction, deal with the biggest corporations at the moment, right? It has all of this in it, okay? So when you look at this was brought home to us about 18 months ago. We had a person leave the organization. Full disclosure, we fired him, right? And in their exit interview, they said, and it was a trigger for us. They said, you made me drive to the office for meetings every 2 weeks for a day. It was a 2-hour drive, and it took me 2 days to recover, right? And when I was there, people cursed. She was talking about me, right? And it made us feel unsafe, right? So we were looking at this going, the only thing that happens in our office is laughing and generally taking the piss out of each other. And I was looking at this going, you had to drive for an hour or two, once every 3 weeks, and all of a sudden it broke you. And then they couldn't tell the difference between somebody cursing and somebody kind of screaming at them. And we were looking at this going, if this is what the future looks like, we have a problem, right? And to give you an idea, that person was 38 as well. So it wasn't the Gen Zs and the millennials. It was actually older. Yeah. So we went to HR. And we said, we want to build something different, right? And all the buzzwords came out, right? And then we went out to suppliers who might do this kind of work, and all the buzzwords came out of the suppliers, right? And so there was nothing. And what we realized was we didn't want to create HR, we wanted to create something 10 times HR, right? Something that's entirely different. And what we created within the business is what's called unlimited. And unlimited is what happens if you come in to work and you experience something and you feel unlimited and you feel like you can do anything, and you also feel like you can be free. Yeah. Now, you won't find the manual for how to do this in too many places. But what we all want is that freedom, right? And that connection. We want to feel other people, and Jack said it earlier, like people are buying off people. They're connecting with their hearts and they're understanding who they are and they're building trust, right? And what we want is that freedom, right? And when I was listing off the problems, you can tell that those problems are pulling us more and more away from freedom. So I hate to break this to you. If you think this person here is a long ways off from where you are, but the way to do this stuff is to go deep, right? So things that happen in our business now are like breathwork sessions, right? Thing I thought I'd never see myself doing with this body, yoga, right? And I still have a running joke, you should never see a 50-year-old man doing yoga, right? And I can only speak for men, okay? But things that are happening in the business now are yoga, breath work, a whole bunch of other things. Food. So in the business, you have vegan or vegetarian food, organic every day. You have breathwork sessions to relieve trauma, not trauma that we give you, hopefully, right? You have yoga. You have very deep work. You have psychology and psychologists provided by a London company called Positive. We, to use a golf phrase, are throwing the fucking bag at this, right? To give you an idea on budgets, we were talking to our private equity investor recently, and they were like, what's going on with the training budget? Right? Because this thing is, we've built a new 7 million, 20,000 square foot center to do this. Right? That's how big the tsunami that we see coming is. Yeah. But it is profound. To give you an idea of what it looks like to throw the bag at it, in January 1, there's a full-time physio for the team. We're 160 people, by the way, to give you an idea of scale. So not thousands, right? This is the next level again. So in the first quarter of next year, we're installing an MRI machine into the business that's got AI. Everything's got AI. So that if you feel an ache or a pain, you can get an MRI scan in the office, right, and know immediately what's going on. More importantly, you can bring your kid in and they can have an MRI scan, right? And there'll be a doc. Right? So if you're looking at all this and you're going, this is ridiculous, what's interesting about this is look at where the world is going. So if you're not looking at AI and realizing that it's going to be most knowledge worker jobs in 3 or 4 years, look again. Yeah. And I can give you a whole lot of resources and podcasts to listen to, Jensen Wang, John Collison, you name it, on this stuff, right? Then if you haven't seen BYD's robot, or you haven't seen Optimus from Tesla, and see what they can do, right? Then look at that and realize that the world is dramatically changing, right? So when the world dramatically changes, then the people that you're going to have, what kind of people are they going to be? And what do you want them to do? Because if you can get somebody to write a proposal, if you can get AI to write a proposal, if you can get AI to do this, 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 and this, if you can get a robot to weld chassis, right, in your factory, if you can do all that, what are humans doing, right? And this isn't in the future. This is now, right? So at that point, how are you treating those humans, right? And you might be curious, like, how is all this going? Right? So in the last 3 years of Cool Planet, revenue has doubled every year. Right? In that same 3 years, overheads have dropped by 1 million a year. Yeah. So the total number of people has dropped. Right? And the performance of those people through the roof. And when you come and visit us, and clients talk about this now all the time, there's just a vibe, right? Everyone's happy. There's no caffeine-fueled all-nighters. Everyone is just working smart, working happy, working deep, right? And this is only the beginning. We're only about 40% in to what Unlimited's going to do. And now what we're doing is clients of ours have come to us and said, hey, we'd like to talk about buying something other than your software and your other stuff. We want to talk about Unlimited, right? Because they have exactly the same problem. And so if you're looking at this and you're saying, rich guy talking shite about fancy stuff in their office, then I haven't done my job properly. Don't look at it like that. Look at it as the food, the phone addiction, yeah, the trauma, all the other stuff, and think about the people you're interacting with and how they're experiencing and their happiness on one hand. On the other hand, think about robots, artificial intelligence, and don't think about that as in the future, because it's there now, right? And think about what are you going to do as a business leader when the two of those things meet together, right? And then think about it is the people. And it's not hundreds or thousands of people. When WhatsApp was sold to Facebook, it was sold for $1 billion with 8 people, right? Anthropic, valued at $2.3 billion, which is an AI company, right? 32 people. So what does your business look like in this world? How are you treating the people, right? And it isn't anymore good enough to go, well, we go on the piss every Friday. No. It's got to be bigger and it's got to be deeper. And then think about how valuable those people are when you do that. Yeah. And by the way, they don't leave, right? It becomes a very different relationship at that point. So it's one of those things where you can ignore it, but as Gandhi said about change, one of my favorite quotes, he said, when change comes, first they mock you, right? Then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. So if you're looking at this and you're going, whoa, this is a little bit out there, just think about that when it comes to change. Yeah? Because in something like electric cars, there was a lot of mocking of Tesla going on. And now if you're Volkswagen, BMW, or Daimler, you're not mocking anymore. You're making announcements about job losses. So, and it's, maybe I've made it a little bit heavy, but it's about joy. It's about freedom. It's about working in a place that's just, as I say, joy with a capital J, right? But actually on the number side is also huge, right? So to finish up, I just thought I'd do something. It was talked about firewalking earlier, and it would be kind of remiss on me not to maybe try and leave you with something about how I live, because I go through the same things as you, right? Anxiety, like wake up in the morning and don't exactly feel like doing the thing we all need to do. And it's nice to have a structure around that, but it's tricky when you're giving advice, because if something is a very big business, you might have one type of advice. If you're trying to raise money, you'd have another type of advice. So it's very hard to give universal advice. And so I realize I've done the thing my wife warned me to do, which is go off script. So maybe just leave you with something that you might remember afterwards, because there's going to be so much information today. So when I was in my early 20s, I used to teach people how to walk on hot coals, right? And how it works with hot coals. And the reason you would do that, by the way, is because it helps you understand fear. And fear is something in work, in particular in life, we all deal with, right? I'm not good enough. I can't do this. This is too big. This is too scary. And so overcoming fear is the superpower. And if you're teaching somebody to walk on hot coals, there are techniques. So what they do when they're going to get you to walk on hot coals is you get 25 ton of timber. You can do this in your backyard. You get 25 ton of timber. You light it up, right? And then it burns. And then when it burns down into coals, then you just lay it out. If your garden is 30 foot long, you can lay it out into a 30-foot bed, right? I'm joking, by the way, and please don't do it, even if you have a big garden. So you roll it out, and it's pretty scary. One of the tricks that we do to scare people more, just because in case they think we're joking, is we get a rasher, and we go, how long do you think it's going to take for this rasher to cook on that bed of hot coals? And everybody guesses, 1 minute, 5 minutes, it's not going to cook at all, right? And then you throw the rasher into the coals, and it just goes, right? And then they know it's serious. Okay? So what you do, first thing is, you're looking down a bed, it's 30 foot long, and if you walk on it in bare feet, it's going to destroy your feet, right? So you're going to need some techniques, right? So the first one is fill your mind with happy thoughts. Because if you're standing there looking at this and you're going, I'm going to burn and this is going to hurt, it's going to hurt, okay? And I've been at firewalks where there are ambulances and many ambulances. So it's going to burn. So fill your mind with happy thoughts. And if you think about every single day, fill your mind with happy thoughts, right? If you're waking up in the morning, and I don't think you are, and you're listening to the radio, and they're talking about this and that and the other, and you're not listening to a podcast or something, that's not filling your mind with happy thoughts, right? If you're hanging around with people, and it's all low energy, and it's all a drag, and it's all this and that, that's not high energy, right? What are you doing that every day, what is the habit that causes high energy to happen, that fills your mind with happy thoughts, and how can you reset? Okay, that's one. And if you're thinking now, I've heard this before, you have, but that doesn't mean you still have to do it, right? The next thing is, it's very important when you're walking on 30 feet, and if you imagine it's from here to that lectern, it would be really important to know where you're going, right? So if you're going to go halfway across, change your mind, come back, that's not great. If you're going to dilly-dally, as one of my daughter's favorite words, then you're going to burn, right? So very important to go from here to there, right? So goals, right? We all talk about goals. Jack was talking about it earlier. Where are you going? What are you doing? Everybody talks about goals, but they never talk about the thing about goals that's the most important, which is you have to have the courage to tell other people what your goal is, right? That's what's called intention, right? And so you dream it up, and then if you keep it to yourself, you write it in a notebook, and then you close the notebook, nothing happens, right? But if you have a goal, and you have the courage to communicate that goal to other people, something magical happens, right? And it's back to what Gandhi said. First they mock you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then they win. So before all of that, they mock you. And so the reason we don't communicate our goals is because people are going to mock us, right? But you have to have the courage to do that. I am going to be the whatever, right? In our case, last one we did, we are going to set up a car company in Wicklow, right? You want to have heard the laughing, right? They mock you, right? So you have to get through that. So what is the goal, and do I have the courage to communicate that goal repeatedly? When I was in my 20s, I didn't have a qualification. I didn't have a lot of talent. And so I used to tell people all the time that I was going to retire before I was 30. I retired before I was 30. I wished I'd said I'm going to retire at 22. It would have saved a lot of hassle, right? So have the courage to communicate the goal constantly, right? They mock you. Mocking is the first step to, then they fight you, then you win, right? The final one, and this is the one that was said earlier, keep fucking walking, right? This is, it can be very hard. It can be very easy. But you have only lost when you stop halfway across, right? If you keep going and you have the resilience to keep going, then you win. You always win because you kept going. But if you're going to keep walking, it's not, we used to just go, you got to be tough enough to do it, right? But now when you'll hear a lot of them today, you use the tools, right? All that weird stuff, meditation, or as a friend of ours calls it, Indian stuff, right? Like, do that weird meditation thing that you think you can't do, right? Do the yoga thing that makes you look funny, right? do the breathwork thing that's kind of embarrassing, that will be talked about later and is so important. So these things are the things that allow you to keep walking. Yeah. So if you can do those things, you will win. It is physics, it is guaranteed, right? So we all better get busy doing it. Thank you.
Brilliant, my friend.
Oh,
Thank you so much. Thank you.